This episode is brought to you by Burn, the fitness company behind the Today Show approved Burn board. If I'm being honest, working out can be a real chore, especially as a new dad in desperate need of sleep and cardio. Burn is founded by NEPA native Jimmy T. Martin, and his Burn board offers a low-impact core and cardio experience unlike anything I've done before. They have hundreds of on-demand workouts that are great for beginners, seasoned athletes, and out-of-shape podcast hosts who love supporting small businesses. My wife and I use it pretty frequently throughout the week, and it's honestly a great way to burn a ton of calories without burning a ton of cash. Not to mention, it's a great tool for skiers, runners, wrestlers, and hockey players. Jimmy is offering all On the Stacks listeners 15% off when they use the code STACKS15. Visit theburn.com today to get 15% off your purchase with code STACKS15 at checkout. Again, that's theburn, THEBRRN.com to get 15% off your purchase with code STACKS15. It's time to get on board today with Burn. This episode is brought to you by Blue Door Financial. Blue Door Financial will help you save money and reduce taxes to live a fuller financial life. To learn more, visit Blue Door Financial online at BLUdoorfinancial.com. That's BLUdoorfinancial.com.
I said, I bet you probably have a negative perception of what I do or what I did do until you came in here. But it's okay. I mean, you don't have to feel embarrassed about being here. If something happened to me and I lost something that I loved or I lost a loved one, better believe I would need a personal injury lawyer. So it's the profession that I think is probably the most looked down upon until we're needed. And that's okay. I mean, I know that. I understand that. And, you know, in part, it's kind of funny, like when you say, like, you get to play music. When you get to go and play music, you don't have, nobody has negative perceptions of musicians. Everybody likes musicians. Right. Maybe that's why I do that on the site, to say, yes, people like musicians.
Yeah, so people like me sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Whoa. Look, they can never keep me down, I'm going. And if I ever fail, just know I'll go again. I never quit, because I know that every loss may lead to another win. I'm going up.
Hi, I'm Bill Corcoran Jr. This is the On the Stacks podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Jamie Anzalone, personal injury attorney and partner at Anzalone Law. What's up, podcast episode 123 of the On the Stacks podcast here in the Blue Door studio. Welcome to the show, Jamie. How you doing?
Good, Bill. What's cracking?
Not much. I brought you here today for your official cross-examination. Are you ready?
I don't know. I haven't been prepared at all.
Did Pedri prepare you or what?
I've had no preparation at all from any personal lawyers. Pedri certainly didn't. He just told me the horrors of this place.
He did, didn't he? He said, don't do it, right?
Don't do it.
Yeah.
And especially since he was like the 101st guest and I'm the 123rd. So that means there's that many more cooler people in Luzerne County before us to interview. So thanks, Bill.
I'm saving the veterans, for the better episodes.
You're just like a lawyer. You have all the answers.
Exactly.
That's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So, been doing law for a long time. Your family's been in the business for a long time. We'll talk a lot about that. Your father just wrote a book, and you brought that today, and we'll hear a little bit about that, which is really cool. And you're also into music. You brought a guitar. And where does law start for you?
Oof. Well, I mean, it starts, every day at 5 a.m, the minute I wake up. And that's the only thing we think about as soon as we wake up, because there's just so much of it. So I guess that's where it starts, day in and day out. But I guess the better question is, how did I ever think about becoming a lawyer and go to law school and do all that? And it's funny that, we kind of talk about that, and it's really timely because, my dad just got an award through a statewide organization called Pennsylvania Association for Justice this past weekend. And I had to introduce him for the award, which was really special, which I had never gotten an opportunity like that. And I wanted to tell, the lawyers in that room where I started out with this thing, and when I wanted to be a lawyer, when I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Well, most people I know that are lawyers, it's kind of an afterthought. They're in college, like, oh, well, I'm good at this, or I'm good at that. Maybe I'll be a lawyer. Most of my friends that are lawyers never thought about becoming a lawyer until much later in life. But if you could actually believe this, I really did want to be a plaintiff's trial lawyer since about age 5. Now, I don't know anybody who can say that. I think that's really kind of ridiculous. Who would want to be a plaintiff?
A 5-year-old.
A 5-year-old want to be a plaintiff's trial lawyer since like their first childhood memory. But back in the day when, of course, there was no remote access, no internet, really no hardly any computers. my dad would come, he'd come back from the office and he'd have dinner with us, but he'd have to go back to the office every night. He'd bring these, I remember this, he'd bring these big briefcases home with him. They were like saddlebags. It was like a pack mule. He'd come in with his big overcoat on and he'd set these saddlebags down and we'd give him a hug. We'd have dinner and then he'd say, okay, I have to go back to the office. And I would actually go back with him because I'm sure my mom was like, get out of my hair. It's great. Go back with your father. And he was working in a big firm at the time, Horgan, Kluger, and Quinn, which is still around today. And I would go back with him. I'd do my homework, but I'd actually just watch him, do his work. And, he'd have these legal pads everywhere. He'd have a little dictation machine, which maybe you've seen these, where you speak into them, you dictate, and then this little tape comes out, and you'd give it to the secretary, and the secretary would type all your letters and do everything. And I'd watch him do this, and I don't know why, but I would be totally enamored by this idea of dictating things and writing on legal pads and having briefcases. And so since that point forward, and what I'm getting at is I saw him do this, and it would appear to be a lot of work. And obviously it was, but he didn't seem bothered at all by it. In fact, he seemed happy with it. So I would watch this, this was like 10 years. I'd go back to the office and I'd watch the joy he was getting doing all this work. And I guess it got ingrained in me that this seems like a great profession if you're getting this much joy by doing this much work. And it's funny, I couldn't wait to get out of law school and start dictating. I mean, who the hell wants to get out of school and dictate? And I was into it. And we don't even use that anymore.
Yeah.
Everything's remote. We don't even go back to the office anymore to work sometimes, but everything is remote. But anyway, I really did know that I wanted to be a trial lawyer since I was a kid. And I never strayed, never once. That was every course I took was geared toward in my head, oh, how will this work in trial law one day? How will this work in trial law? So never strayed. So it starts with me every day, every morning when I wake up. It's all I think about because there's just so much to do. And it's just been ingrained in my body, my blood since I was a kid. So that's where it started.
On the Stacks will be back in a flash after a word from our sponsor.
Hi, it's Patrick Doyle, and welcome to Access Anzalone. Today I'd like to talk about some of the factors you consider when selecting your personal injury attorney. One of the things that we think you should consider is whether the firm and the attorney that you're hiring is involved in the groups and organizations that provide them and their firm with the access to information and the skill set to adequately represent you in complex cases. At our firm, 3 of our partners are members of the Board of Governors of the Pennsylvania Association for Justice, the statewide trial organization. In that role, I'm afforded information about court rulings throughout our entire state affecting medical malpractice cases. So it's important when you go about selecting your personal injury attorneys that you hire a firm and an attorney that has the skill set, that has the knowledge, and that is involved in the groups and association to help you best advance your case.
And now we're back on the Stacks. Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're young kid, real young kid, like you said. Every course you took, through high school, and then obviously then in college,
right,
was geared towards.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is, I guess if this didn't work out, I was really going to be screwed because most people I knew would go to college and they would be economics majors because maybe they can go into business or do something. I was a government and law major. What the hell am I going to do with that if I don't go to law school? So I was this great writer. I would write and I would research and learn about the government and this and that. But I'm not sure it would have done much for me if law school didn't work out. So yeah. I mean, so within that major, I was always gearing toward things that were interesting to me with the law side of it.
Yeah.
And even in college, I loved it because it's what I love about it, and I love to this day, is nothing about it's black and white. Your thought process, people who think in complete black and white terms, it has to be this or it can't be that. I was trained since I was such a young guy to not think of things that way, and government law helped that, and then law school helps that even further, and that's why you can basically get a case any which way and figure out a way to argue it because you get trained not to think in black and white, and that was a natural way for me to think anyway. So that it was great.
Where did you learn that?
Well, I think growing up, I mean, my mom's family, my mom's a medico, so Medico Industries, and they sold the company since they made shells for the government. So they work for a defense contractor. They're a defense contractor. That is so different than anything my dad did. So that was her background. But my dad and my mom was a teacher, so she didn't go into her family business, but she was a teacher, and so she was forced to always think and talk about topics and whatnot. And then my dad, obviously through law school, and then doing the type of work he did, he would talk about his cases a lot. And you would hear about people who were downtrodden and got hurt through someone else's fault, or they grew up rough and they didn't get all the breaks, and here they are having a case against a big corporation or something. And I think constantly talking about that, learning from my dad as I'd go back to the office with him, asking what his cases are, I think it just got ingrained in us that nothing is as it seems, or nothing's black and white. You have to work through the process, and only when you do that can you get to where you want to be. So I think, again, that's shaped a lot of the way we think about politics, a lot of the way we think about work, about people in general. So yeah, I'm grateful for that way of thought.
Yeah, definitely. And you also kind of mentioned like writing, and that you're a good writer and you like to write, and you also brought today with you a journal that used to write your own music. So is that kind of tie together?
Yeah, so I'll say something here. My law partners would take issue with me saying I'm a good writer because I don't I don't write briefs anymore.
They beg to differ, huh?
And they would bust me on that. What I meant by that really was I can write creatively, and I've always kind of had this knack. Even when I was a kid, I was able to write a lot of poems. I used to do that for my mom, sister. I never got them gifts. I'd write poetry for them for Christmas or their birthdays. Maybe it was also because I was too lazy to go out and get a gift. It was easier just to write the poem. But yeah. So I writing creatively, and I guess writing, defending somebody or writing for a side kind of came natural to me. And again, it's that lack of black and white thinking. It's a little bit more abstract. So yeah, jumping ahead, I guess, to the music a little bit. I got into music when I was in law school. I mean, I played piano growing up. 8, 9, 10 years, and I stopped because of sports, and I played football the rest of my life throughout college. But then when that was done, I needed something else to do, so I started playing guitar, and a roommate of mine in college taught me how to play. So I get to law school, and I said, I have to do something. Believe it or not, as hard as law school is, with no football and no practice, and not something to keep you, for the next 3 hours after the school part's over, I needed a hobby. So I started playing guitar very regularly. And then I got it in my head that, it's going to be hard to speak in public, even though I kind of had a bit of a knack for that. I'm pretty comfortable with that, but it's still hard. It's still getting, going in front of a jury, talking to complete strangers. And then I know in this world of the law, there's a lot of seminars and you have to speak a lot, and you're constantly being called on to speak in front of people. So I said, I have to kind of grizzle myself and toughen myself to getting it so that it's just second nature talking. But one way I thought I would do that and still kind of scratch the itch of wanting to play music would be to just start singing and playing guitar. I never dreamed that it would go where it actually went and where it is today, which is kind of funny. But in law school, I said, I'm going to start playing open mics. I'm going to get the courage to go in there with a guitar, learn a cover song, and play a song. And I could tell you that's probably they say public speaking is the most terrifying. I think that's the most terrifying thing that you can do. So if you want to get yourself to get some guts up to do things, try doing that first. And it's terrifying because you're sitting there with like two people that are in the bar. They both kind of want to hear something good, but they're expecting it to be bad, right?
Yeah, you're ready to get booed.
You're ready to get booed. So I did that, and I built the courage up, and I did it all through law school. Every week I went to this open mic. I went to school at Dickinson, and I traveled down to Harrisburg, downtown, 25 minutes every Monday night to do this open mic. Got it, built the courage up, and got it pretty good at it. It was,
And you went by yourself?
By myself.
Yeah.
When my sister wouldn't come with me. She actually did come with me a couple times. But I went there, built the courage up, and I was learning everything. Any cover I can get my hand on. And I'm into, Grateful Dead, the band, Neil Young, that kind of stuff. I love that type of music. And I was doing it. And you get into a lot of detours on these questions. I'm sorry, but I was at the open mic one night. I'll never forget this. And I was, again, maybe too much courage. And I was playing Neil Young songs. I think I played 3 songs. Like Old Man, Southern Man. I was doing them all. And if you could just hear the way my voice sounds, it's deeper. It's not like Neil Young's at all. And this guy comes up to me when I got done playing one of the songs, and I was done packing up my stuff. And I was kind of proud of the way I did it. I thought I hit the notes. he actually kind of looked like Neil Young. Maybe he was kind of Neil Young, like just there, his shadow.
Yeah.
But he had a duster on, long duster, and a big cowboy hat. And he comes over to me and he goes, "Son, I think next week you'll leave your friend Neil Young at home."
Oh no.
I was so discouraged. I'm like, I am never ever playing another Neil Young song again. And then, I did 10 years later.
But you showed up again next week.
Showed up again next week and just did another song and just kept doing it. But getting to the journal, as you said about writing.
Yeah.
So I took a stab at writing a few songs in law school. They were awful. I mean, absolutely awful as I look back on them. Not good at all. But I was trying. The words were at least creative. So when I got home, I was 25 years old, and my wife and I are together, and we got married young. We're 25, no kids. And for 5 years, all I really did was practice law, but I played a ton of guitar, and I wrote songs, and I started doing it, and I got okay at it. And I started to, keep track of everything, and I'm glad I did. I mean, instead of just making it sloppy, like, a lot of us lawyers do, just kind of throw things around.
Yeah, a lot of notes everywhere.
Right. And I actually invested in this lovely leather-bound book, and I wrote songs for like the next 5 years. If it's like every single night I would try to do something, and I ended up writing like 45, 50 songs. And I'm glad that I wrote them down. And then what I did in this book was on the left side of the page, I would tell the story of where I was and what I thought of and how I got to that point. And I don't think I've written a song in, sadly, like 10 years. But I'm glad I kept this book together, because I go back and I look at that and I'm like, that's why you were creative. And now I'm not as creative anymore, because the life events are different. And I think that's kind of how writing goes a little bit. I mean, you go into these phases, and now it's my kids. It's 10 years, and every moment is filled with the kids doing something. So the creative process, goes down a little bit. But as they're getting older and I get some more time, maybe it'll come back.
Maybe you'll go back to the book.
Yeah, maybe we'll get back to the book.
All right. So did you ever do it? So all right. So you wrote a ton of songs, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever end up doing anything with those?
So again, I never dreamed this would happen. So I was playing on my own a lot. I used to play with a looper. I used to be into a guy named Keller Williams. He's a jam band guy, and he did all these loopings. So he would, lay something down with chords, hit a button, then it loops, it continues to go, and he gets crazy. I mean, he has bass that he loops in there. He has drums he loops in. I wasn't crazy like that. I just basically did it with guitar. So I played for like 5 years, 6 years on my own, just on my own doing that. And I got pretty good at it. I actually got to open for Cabinet a couple times at Jazz Cafe. Those guys were great. That was wonderful. So I never dreamed that could happen. But then that kind of was, dwindling, doing anything like that for myself. And I'll never forget, I was in Baltimore, and I was seeing a band that's called The Bridge. Awesome band that I saw for like 10 years. And I called my buddy, who is a guy by the name of Matt Gabriel, who plays with a band now called The Electric Gentlemen, plays with Dustin Drovovich. They're fantastic. He played with Mike Miz a bunch. And I'll never forget, I called him. This is now almost 15 years ago. I called him, I said, Matt, and he had no band experience. He was a great player, but he never really was in bands. I go, we have to form a band. This has to happen. That I'll never forget. That was a Saturday. On Tuesday of that week, he had 4 guys that were ready to go. And we got into the basement in his house in Wilkes-Barre, and I had these original songs. I had like 10, 12 really solid original songs, but I had played them for years by myself with just an acoustic guitar, never with a band. So he comes in, and now I'm watching these guys take my songs and really make them special, I thought, with parts and things I never dreamed of. I just kind of said, here's the songs, here's the music, and they started ripping them apart and doing all this cool stuff with it. So we got starting to play, and that band stayed together for about a year, and then each member left, and we filled in with 3 new members, and then I've been with the same guys for almost 13 years now.
Wow.
So that's what, and for the first like 4 years, we were just an original band. Didn't even play covers. I mean, maybe like 4 or 5, but it was all original. Then at some point, once you're not really like making it and, playing big venues, you got to start doing covers. And the last 10 years have been pretty much that. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, and it's still going on. We're still getting to do it.
Yeah.
We still play once a month, different places.
Where do you play?
The Joint has been one we've been enjoying, and on River Street. And honestly, I'll give a shout out to him. Thank God for Rob Friedman and the amount of places he's bought around here and made very cool. If it wasn't for the Jazz Cafe, a lot of us wouldn't have started playing music. So thank God for that. And then the Joint, since he's taken that over, it's really cool, and it's got like this New Orleans vibe upstairs, which I love. That's been a big influence on me in my life, that town. And so we're playing there in October and in November, and it's just the best side hobby I can think of. And I'm so grateful for it, and I never thought it would have lasted this long.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, all right, so you just mentioned the New Orleans and the vibe, and you said it was influential on your life. What was it about New Orleans?
So I guess, going back to the music, and I don't want to be repetitive, but a lot of my life is driven by music. Even the lawyer stuff, as much as I love it, that is my life. But if it wasn't for the music part of it and to give me the balance, I don't know if I would be able to have stayed as mellow during some of the situations that I've had in the law part. So we were festival goers. My wife and I, that's how we met. We used to go to see a lot of music. We used to go to these festivals where we'd be camping for 3 nights and, not showering, really pleasant stuff.
Yeah.
We were into it. For the first couple of years we were married with no kids. And then we had kids, and that's kind of fell off. I said, what are we going to do? We got to do, something. And we kind of lost a little interest in going to festivals all the time. So her parents, who they were just such wonderful people, her dad in particular just loved New Orleans. And I said, I'm happy to go. I can't wait. I'll never forget, we were there. It was like 12 years ago, probably the first time, maybe a little longer. And I basically said, this is a festival with being able to go home and shower and go to a nice hotel and then go to a nice dinner and see every band you want in like these awesome venues. And that was it. Then we really never really went to the festivals.
This was like luxury now.
It was luxury. This is luxury festival going.
Yeah.
But with the coolest vibe I've ever seen. And that town, when I saw it, I mean, a lot of people don't like New Orleans. They go and they're like, oh, it stinks. It does. There's a scent. It doesn't smell good.
There's a scent. I've never been.
It's shocking at first because, first of all, it does have a little smell to it, but it has a character to it that it's like something you've never seen, because the whole French Quarter, they have ordinances you can't build more than 3-story buildings. It's like you're back in 18th century France, but with this vibe of people who just know how to live. They really let the music move them. Everything, even in the funerals, when someone passes away, they have parades, and they call it being in the second line. You march behind the band, and everything is just this celebration of life and music and taking it all in. And so we got into that, my wife and I, and I've been there like 15 times. I love it. Anytime there's something with work, if I could speak at a seminar down there, I'm there in 2 seconds.
You're going.
Because I love it. So yeah, that's been very influential on me. And it always reminds me of my wife's dad, who unfortunately passed recently, like 2 years back. And every time we go and I see pictures of it, it reminds me of him, and he got us into it. And I'll never forget this. We were there, and he would come up. He was from Baltimore. He had this great, like, old-fashioned Baltimore accent. And he used to say to me, babe, we're in New Orleans. We're here to party. So we still quote that line. And I love it.
I love it. That's really cool. So one of these days I'll have to get down there and smell it.
You have to.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid of the smell.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Inside
right.
the restaurants, that goes away.
It doesn't. When you're inside eating, it's a little better.
Yeah. And then you walk outside, and then it's back.
Okay. So it's just like outside in the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. There's, it's like 2 square miles of like 100 bars. Now there's great music, but they're all bars, and you can drink everywhere. So
a lot of smells going on.
A lot of smells.
A lot of smells. Yeah. That's funny. All right, so let's talk a little bit about you getting into law. So after law school, you move back home. You're here in Wilkes-Barre, and what did you start doing?
Well, so a couple of things about that. When I first got done with law school, my dad had a practice at the time. My dad was a fantastic lawyer. He was really recognized statewide, kind of a pioneer in this area of the law and what he did for the community and whatnot. And I'd love to get into that a little bit later. But he was really, he was just him and one other lawyer at the time. It was in the personal injury law world, we'd call it a really boutique practice, pretty small practice, although he had a big name and he had great results, but he did a lot of stuff on his own. So the issue was, there's a great opportunity here. we're going to get in here. I'd love to go into this practice I've been waiting to get into my whole life. But there's a certain skill level that it requires, to be able to handle those types of cases and hit the ground running. So I'll never forget this. My dad and I had a conversation, and he says, maybe just to get a lot of quick experience, you can work in the district attorney's office. You'll get a lot of quick trial experience, and, it's a great way to be in the courtroom. And, that was 16 years ago I'm doing this. So, and he's now retired pretty much. So 16 years ago, I said, I would love to do that. I think that's a great idea. I said, but respectfully, I'm going to turn it down because I've been waiting my whole life to practice with you. I don't want to wait and do 5 years there. I have to get in and learn everything that you know. You got to teach me. And again, the firm was small. There was no partners. It was just him. And I said, if I can just follow him around, and I had all my own cases, but to be able to mentor with him for 5 years, we always call it the 5-year residency. It's like being a doc, just to learn everything. I think I'll be better served. And as we talk now, he's 71, I'm 41. And we say, thank God we didn't go to the district attorney's office because those 5 years were critical. Yeah. And I just hit the ground running and loved every minute of it. And then, over the next 10 years, we got more people in. Pat Doyle, who I went to, I played against in the Unico All-Star game in football. And we almost went to Johns Hopkins together, which we didn't even know each other at the time. I mean, I could have gone, but I didn't go there. Last minute, I went to Lafayette. He went to Johns Hopkins. So we always talk. We just missed each other by that much. And then in law school, we became very good friends. He did do the district attorney thing for 5 years in Philadelphia. And then he ended up coming back and joining our firm. And we've since we're partners now. And that was like the last 10 years. It's been great. And then we have another, a cousin of mine. Her name's Kelly Ceravolo. She's most well known for her triathlete accolades. I mean, she's one of the best triathletes in the country, actually, amateur. But she's a phenomenal lawyer. And she joined our firm, and she's another one of our partners. And my sister, she's out in Denver, runs our Denver office. She's a partner. And I have a sister-in-law. Her name's Jane. She does all of our estate and commercial work. So this little boutique firm that started out with, really my dad and I, has now grown in something. It's not much bigger, but it's a lot bigger compared to what it was. So, yeah, it's definitely changed, but we're having a blast.
Yeah. It's nice. So you learned a real lot from your dad in those first 5 years, just kind of shadowing and just grinding it out with your dad.
Yeah, and it was, again, I had no kids, so it was nothing to stay at the office till 7:30, blasting that dictaphone left and right. That's when dictating was hot. To think that we took this little tape and gave it to a secretary to type your letters out is just so archaic now. I can't even imagine doing that. But that's, what I was doing, and just learning everything there was to know about this type of law.
Yeah. So by the way, I know a lot of people think like lawyers are like, bad guys and mean guys, and you're not so mean.
Well,
you're an all right guy.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
Well, for this interview now, because people are watching.
Right.
The shark comes in when I leave.
Yeah, we're not on trial.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a good point. And I think if you just sat around, I think there's probably nobody that you know of that sits around and says, God, I love personal injury lawyers.
Right, it's true.
They're top of the list.
Right,
they're just the best guys.
I love them.
Love them.
Yeah.
I love what they do, what they stand for. I
Right.
love their advertising. I love the way they're portrayed. No, I mean, it's sadly one of the most looked down upon professions, which is insane because, and I say this because I've seen it happen for 16 years, every person that I've ever seen who has doubts about personal injury lawyers and talks bad about them, the minute something happens to them where they need a personal injury lawyer, we're okay. And I could tell you because I've signed up hundreds of clients who sat in our conference room, and God bless them, because it's our perception. It's our issue. It's not their issue. It's ours. They sit in the conference room with us, and the first thing out of their mouth is, and they're hurt. They've been wronged by somebody, and they're in a bad position. And they say, I'm not the type who just sues somebody. And I say, I know that. Everybody who sits in your place has said that. No one is someone who just wakes up and says, I want to sue somebody. There are some people, I'm sure, right? But The majority of people aren't like that. So I tell them, I said, listen, I bet you probably have a negative perception of what I do or what I did do until you came in here. But it's okay. I mean, you don't have to feel embarrassed about being here. If something happened to me and I lost something that I loved or I lost a loved one, better believe I would need a personal injury lawyer. So it's the profession that I think is probably the most looked down upon until we're needed. And that's okay. I mean, I know that. I understand that. And, in part, it's kind of funny, like when you say, like, you get to play music. When you get to go and play music, you don't have nobody has negative perceptions of musicians. Everybody likes musicians.
Right.
Maybe that's why I do that on the site, is say, yes, people like musicians.
Yeah, so people like me sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But once they get with you and you're now representing them and you're fighting for them, I think that perception changes, unless they have a bad experience, which that's going to happen. But for the most part, if they have a good experience and you can fight for them and try to put their lives back together, I think whatever they thought of before, it's wiped away. And there's a lot of reasons, I think, why the perceptions are bad. Obviously, I mean, we're in the most competitive, one of the most competitive marketing spaces ever, right? I mean, look at lawyer advertising. You can go to any state in the country and they're flooded with lawyer ads, mostly personal injury ads. That's just the nature of this practice, unfortunately, in this type of law. I would love not to advertise. All of us would. It's not fun to get up there. If you've been injured, call out. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, our listeners and viewers already saw like 5 or 6 of your videos before this episode.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's not what you like wake up in the morning loving to do, but that's just the market space you're in. Unfortunately, it's very competitive. And if you don't do that, it's hard to get cases. And obviously, to make your practice thrive, of course, you need cases. There's the advertising. I think that gives us a very bad name. Of course, if your neighbor who's like, a wonderful lady or someone has been sued by a lawyer and they've had to go under a deposition and go under oath, it's nerve-wracking, and they have somebody like me asking them questions who doesn't know them. That's uncomfortable. They're not happy with it. So then that gets around and they say, I was sued by this lawyer and he was terrible and he made me feel so bad.
Yeah.
So, if you're on the other side of us, it furthers the perception that we're these awful shark human beings.
So the moral of the story is don't be on the other side.
You don't want to be try not to hurt people.
Yeah.
But again, I think the issue is, remember that if you do, it's an accident and it does happen. And you have insurance, and that's why you have insurance, is because people are human beings. We make mistakes, and that's why you cover yourself. And again, I think that's the other misperception. I think people think that, you make a mistake and this shark lawyer is going to take your house. I could tell you in 16 years of doing this, I've never, ever once recovered someone's personal asset, ever. It's all through insurance. That's what it's there for.
So that's a myth.
That what you're going to be homeless if you cause an accident? Yeah. Yes, that's a complete myth.
There we go. Squashed. What else? Give me some. Is there any other ones that? What else is there?
I don't know. Too many. I don't really want to go into all of them.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. So a few minutes ago, you mentioned about your dad being really a pioneer, in your industry, in your field, as an attorney. His book is here. Maybe this ties a little bit in with this book that he just finished. Tell me a little bit more about your dad and why he has really been a pioneer. Yeah,
I think, again, it goes back to, I think he struggled with all the same things that I struggle with, which is, a lot of our friends, and he has a, good, diverse, unique group of friends like I do. The perception of what we do is so bad. And it's hard to walk into a room with my friend who, owns a printing company, right? Or someone who owns a business. And what you guys do is you build businesses. You're contributing. And I think our view of us is that we destroy. We take away from businesses. And we know that's not true, but that's the perception. So he always struggled with that, as I have, with that perception. So what he did was, at a young age, when he went out on his own and he had his own practice, which was the early 90s, he took it upon himself to try to make the image of just lawyers in general, not just personal injury lawyers, but lawyers in general in our community better. And he did so by starting a lot of different organizations and running campaigns through Luzerne County Bar association to better the image of lawyers. And a lot of lawyers don't do that. They're so engulfed in their own practice, and naturally so, because it's a lot of work, that he stepped out from that and how much work he was doing to try to better the image. And he ran this whole campaign with the help of the Luzerne County Bar Foundation and Bar Association to run huge billboards saying, have you hugged a lawyer today? And if you need a lawyer, and that was the first billboard, and the next billboard would be, when something happens, the next billboard is, you love your lawyer. You know, it was this whole marketing thing that basically softened the image of lawyers. And so he was a bit of a pioneer in that regard and trying to make their reputations better. He also did things in our county bar that had never been done. So we have what's called the Luzerne County Bar Foundation Charitable Association. We never had that until he started it. And what it is it's a foundation that we solicit donations from various people to build up a reservoir of funds so that when people ask, in various charities, we can write those checks to them. And just really through him starting it and getting it going, Luzerne County has given over $350,000 out to various charitable organizations. So that was very cool. A lot of, some lawyers, they really just a lot of them want accolades. Again, rightfully so. It's a competitive market space. But to take your time to say, I'm going to make our bar foundation better and help the reputations of lawyers to do so. So that was kind of pioneering. And, through our statewide trial lawyer organizations, he was kind of on the front lines and, getting different laws written and making sure that, victims continue to have the rights they deserve. And so he's always been on the front lines. So we call him a pioneer in that he blazed the trail for all of us to follow in and made it a little easier to do what we do. But yeah, he just got done writing a book. So like I said, he's basically retired now. And he lives in California like 7 months a year in Southern California. So he's doing it right. He said, I'm not dying behind a desk. And I hope to walk in that same path.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was out in California. We were hanging out. And he says, well, I'm almost done with the book. I said, what book? Wait, yeah, you're writing a book? You didn't tell me this. He goes, oh, yeah. I have 200 pages done already. You have to be kidding me. Like, here's this guy, like, he's calling me every day. So what's going on there? Anything new? Like, we have these conversations every day.
And he doesn't tell you
Never
anything.
once was it mentioned that he's writing a book.
Pages
he's 200 in on a manuscript.
Yeah.
So I couldn't believe that. And so in the last year, he got it all finished. And what it is, it's called So You Want to Be a Plaintiff's Trial Lawyer. Want to be a Plaintiff's Trial Lawyer. And the whole part of the book, and that's all we do. We don't really do anything else. We do plaintiff's trial work. And again, it goes back to the perception. People have this perception that, oh, you're a trial lawyer, you just make a lot of money and you don't really work that much, and it's that simple. Well, the book talks about, you think you're cut out for this and you want the life because, we have a nice watch, we have a nice suit, drive a nice car. Let me tell you what it's really all about. And he goes through his beginnings in life, making very little money, and the idea that, what trial lawyers do, which is different than a lot of professions, is every case we take, we fund. We put our own money into it. And we don't get paid hourly. A lot of lawyers do, corporate attorneys, commercial attorneys, really almost all of them get paid hourly. So win, lose, or draw, they get paid. Well, plaintiff's trial lawyers, we fund all of the cases, we put all of our money into it, and we only get paid if we win. So if you really want to be a true trial lawyer, and he was, and when I say blaze the path, he's tried so many cases, and we're following in those footsteps, is that you're going to go into a courtroom and maybe put potentially 40 or 50, 100, 150, depending how big the case is, $1,000 into a case. And if the jury says we find for the defendant, we eat all those costs and we don't get paid for any of the hourly work we do.
And you bill nothing.
Nothing. We don't bill clients. That's trial lawyer work with representing plaintiffs is contingency based only. So, yeah, you're going to try to take cases you can win. Of course, you are investing. But believe me, there's a lot of cases that we take that we think we can win, only to be told by 12 jurors that you lost. And you bite that bullet where I could promise you there is nothing that hurts worse. Well, of course, true grief and passings, they hurt much worse. But in the business world, things I've been exposed to, there's nothing worse than losing a trial. And I guess not only because you lost money and you didn't get paid at all for what you did, but 12 jurors didn't believe you. And that's disheartening. So he talks about that and he says, you want this lifestyle, you want to, live large or make it look like you are. There's so much work that goes into it, and there's a lot of disappointment. And he has this great quote in there that says, if anybody tells you that they've never lost a case, that means they haven't tried a case. And so he goes through all that, and he kind of just pulls back the curtain for young trial lawyers or people who want to be trial lawyers on what it's really all about. And it's filled with all these great stories that I don't think in my entire career I'll ever get, because I'll say the old days and embarrass him for a minute. Things were just different. Okay, they just were different things that happened in courtrooms, and they amount to this volume of hilarious stories that I just don't think could happen today.
Yeah.
And so it's just a great read. It's a fun read. You can get through it pretty quick. So that's what he's been doing the last 2 years, and what he's doing now, again, and this goes back to what I'm so proud of him for, and how, like I said, he blazed the path and got the image better. He's not selling this book. It's for free. So what he does is he'll go to, say, the Luzerne County bench bar, and he'll give all the books to every lawyer for free. On the stacks, we have stacks of these books at our office. Stacks.
I love it.
And it'd be nice if we were getting paid for them, but we're not.
Right.
No. So anyway, we have all these books, and the idea is to go to these different seminars and go to these different bar organization meetings and whatnot, and give out like 100 to 150 books to all the lawyers in the room for free. And then there's an insert in the book that he gives a little, message to them saying, this is my gift to you. And in return, and there's nothing says you have to do this, I'd like you to donate to this local charity. And there's a little screenshot thing, like what do you call it? Those codes that you see at restaurants.
Yeah, like a little QR code.
QR code.
Yeah, couldn't think of it either. Yeah.
And you're in this technology
I know.
world.
Jeez.
So you take the picture with your phone, and it goes right to the charitable foundation's website. Whether it's our bar foundation's website or something statewide, whatever it is, whatever the organization putting the seminar on wants to go to, you hit that, and it takes you to a landing page, and then that person can donate.
Very cool.
For a free book. So it's just another thing that he's done to me that is kind of pioneering, and I think he's the first lawyer in Luzerne County that does what we do, that has written a book and done this. So it's pretty cool.
And that's my copy, right?
That's yours, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
And if you come to the office, I'll have him sign it for you.
I'm definitely going to need that signed.
You're going to have to come on a Monday where there's no golf.
Is that what it is? All right. Yeah, fair enough. All right. So you've spent a lot of time, business, with your father, and, I'm sure there's a lot of life stuff too. But, out of everything, like, what do you think you learned the most from your dad?
From my dad. Well, so I think to know where he's at today, it's really important to know where he came from. I think sometimes in a small community like this, you have a last name and you get this impression, oh, life was given to you. And it really wasn't, not to him, not to me. I mean, it's until you know the people, you can't really appreciate it. But really where he comes from, the story's wonderful. So his dad and mom, his dad was Sicilian, his mom was Irish. And he had two sisters. First sister was 12 years older than him. The other sister was 10. And he had a brother, his name was James, and he was 4 years older than him. And at birth, his neck was broken. And it was unfortunately medical malpractice, but that didn't exist back then. And not that it would matter anyway, but it just didn't exist. And so he had his neck broken at birth. And my grandparents had taken him to a bunch of different doctors to see what the prognosis was. And they basically said, he'll really be lucky to make it to 7 years old. Because what happened was he had water in his brain. They call it hydrocephalus. And his head got very large and he wasn't able to support it anymore. So he couldn't be in a wheelchair. So he had to lie on his back. I mean, literally crippled, where his arms would be up like this. His legs were the same. And he had to be on his back. So they said, if he makes it to 7, that would be a miracle. He died at 55.
Wow.
And for all of those years, if you can believe this, up until like the last 5 when he went to a nursing home, my grandparents took care of him while running. My grandfather had a business. He ran a business and went every single day, 3 times a day, changed diapers, fed him, changed bed sheets. I mean, I can't imagine doing that. I mean, my kids, scream a little loud and it drives me crazy. But imagine doing what they did for all those years. And I remember them very, very well. And they never complained about it, ever. You never even knew that anything was wrong, ever. And my dad saw that. And I think he saw that they fought for someone who couldn't fight for himself. And I really think that's kind of where he comes from, that he got into what we do. And we always say we fight for people who can't fight for themselves. They can't fight a corporation on their own. They can't fight an auto dealership on their own. They can't, go after a trucking company on their own, or a hospital who betrayed them on their own. They need someone to fight for them. And I think that was ingrained in him, to fight for someone who couldn't fight for themselves, by watching that. And it just kind of gives him a sense of strength that always amazed me. And if I could have a quarter of what my grandparents had, a tenth, 100th, I would be thrilled. And I think that's just who he is, and it's in our blood, and that's,
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
Holy smokes. Oh my God. So this really does kind of go really, really far back, this whole thing. I mean, it's all kind of connected.
Yeah.
Wow.
I never really saw it that way until like the last year or so.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, maybe I did, but I don't know. As you have your own kids and growing up, and you're in the first like 5 or 10 years of your craft, like a doctor, like that's what you're working on. You're trying to be good at what you do and learn. Well, once you start getting pretty comfortable with it, I guess your mind has a little bit more time to think about how's it all here?
Connected? Yeah.
Right? And here's my dad basically
happen?
like feels good enough to essentially be done taking cases and kind of, retiring. How could he do it? And I think it's because he put so much into it, and fought so hard for those who couldn't fight for themselves. It's exhausting. Like it was exhausting for my grandparents. I mean, not that they're the same, but it's kind of a bit of an analogy. And, so that's where he's at. And I think that's what it comes from.
Wow. Really cool. So do your kids take interest in what you do? Like you did as a kid?
Yeah, no, definitely not.
They didn't want to be a lawyer from age 5, huh?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
My one daughter, they're both very into what they do. Thank God. My one daughter is a dancer. She's ballet, very serious about it. It's like 3 or 4 nights a week. My other daughter is a competitive cheerleader, where they're doing backflips, they're getting thrown up and doing somersaults and being caught. They're just so consumed by that. Of course, when you ask them what they want to be, they say, "Oh, professional dancer, professional cheerleader."
Yeah.
I say, well, you better hope Daddy continues to be a lawyer if you want to continue that lifestyle.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
No, they're hard things to be professionals in, obviously, but
yeah.
But so that's what they love. But they are interested in what I do, and especially if I'm in a trial. Did you win? This and that.
Yeah. So how do you deal with those pressures? Like when you come home at the end of the day, you have a family.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier on, you kind of mentioned like those pressures of the courtroom and stuff. Like how do you deal with that on a personal level at the end of the day?
I think obviously a few years back it was a little tougher. Well, I should say it depends on what's going on, what case you're involved in, right? So if you're in a very complicated case that has really bad damages, if you're unfortunately dealing with somebody who, is in a bad truck accident and they're paralyzed, and you're seeing just awful, awful things, and especially when they involve children, or you have sex abuse cases, where literally people's innocence is being ripped from them. That's a lot to deal with. I don't ever want to say you get hardened to it, you get used to it. So I guess 10 years ago, I wasn't used to it, and I'd be seeing these awful things, people having just horrible things happen to them, and it would keep you up at night. I mean, it was tough. My sister started, it was so bad for her, she couldn't even drive in a car for like the first year, because we deal with so many car crashes, and one day you're just driving down the road, and then the next day your life is totally changed. Takes a little bit to get through. But you do, and it's like anything else. I think almost like, not to ever compare ourselves to doctors, it's totally different, but doctors see some terrible things, and you kind of have to get a little hardened to it because you're able to do your job better. But at the same time, you have to have this soft side that you could appreciate and realize that this is a human being that's going through this, and to dive in. So it's a balance. But I've been doing it long enough now where it's,
Hey, you've been doing it since you were 5.
Yeah, that's right. I've been dictating since I was 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've just gotten used to it and balancing it. I would say 8 years ago, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and be going through my case list thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Knock on wood, I haven't had too much of that lately. I think, honestly, being able to remote in so easily helps a lot. And I think when, 8 years ago, you'd wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh my God, I got to get to the office. I have to do this. If something's really on my mind and I have to grab something quick, I could do it from my phone. So I think that alleviates a lot of the stress. And, the problem is we're dialed in constantly. We're constantly connected now. And there's some, that adds to a little bit of the, inability to let it go. But I think since my phone is always here, I never feel like I'm disconnected from what's happening. So if I need something, I can get it quickly. And I think that, believe it or not, for me at least, it alleviates a lot of the anxiety.
Yeah. I don't care what Dave Pedri says about you. You're a good guy.
Thanks.
All right? Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So how can our listeners connect with Anzalone Law online?
Well, hopefully you don't need Anzalone Law online because that means something happened to you. But if you need us for anything that did happen to you, or you have a friend who's had something bad happen to them, Anzalonelaw.com. That's obviously the easiest way to do it. And we're on Facebook and Instagram, and so you can see all of our posts. And we've been happy to be sponsoring on the Stacks by giving you the Access Anzalone videos. And again, going back to a little bit of softening the image, we do think it's very important to get to know us for who we are. I think one of the best attributes of our firm is the people that work in it and how conversational and genuine we are. And I really, really mean that. I don't just say that. I am blessed to work with such good people, and I have such wonderful partners. And we wanted to do those Access Anzalone videos to say, look, all you ever see from lawyers is advertising. If you've been injured, call us today. And you have to somewhat be strident on those messages, right? Because you're casting such a wide net. We always hated having to do that. And so we said, we got to start connecting with who we really are. And so we do these videos called Access Anzalone, where we talk about, maybe what separates our firm from others, or about how we can help you do certain things. And so I really enjoy those videos. I love doing stuff like this. So thank you for having me. And, but yeah, obviously our website is the easiest way to get to us. And then, you call our phone number and there's always somebody there. So,
yeah. Very cool. And I appreciate your support of the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people ask for sponsorships, Bill. So
yeah.
So you're on the list.
I'm one of the lucky ones.
This is big.
This is great. Yeah. Well, no, seriously.
No, we try not to. Hopefully not everybody in the world will call us now after I say this, but we sponsor so much charity work.
You do.
And I'll leave it with this quick story.
Sure.
So we have this hat here, and I want to touch on this for a minute. Yeah. So the Unico organization is an Italian-American organization that raises money, at least locally, for mental health charities and mental disability charities. And my dad was in that since the 70s. I got into it the minute I moved back home. And our big thing that we do every year is a football game. And all of the proceeds go straight to these charities. In the last 6-7 years, it was getting to a point where the game's expensive. And it's hard to get the donations because there's so many charities and so many things for people to sponsor. Thank God there are, but it's tough to get a lot into one basket like this. So we were having this issue where we would raise the money and we're almost breaking even, but for a few dollars giving it out to the community. So Anzalone Law offices in the last about 5 or 6 years said we're going to underwrite the game completely. So paying for the refs, paying the coaches, getting the stadium, getting the ambulance, the police, the players' dinners, the coaches' dinners. We said we'll write the cost for all of that. That way, everything that gets raised can go directly to charity. And I really am so proud that we've done that. And this year we were able to give out $30,000 to the community. And there's 5 of us that run the game. We don't have a paid staff or anything. And so the firm underwrites it, and I am so proud that we're able to do that because I am very, very proud of this area. We try to do as much as we can here and, give it as much support as we can. But But you're one of those sponsors, so congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, really, I do. I appreciate it. I appreciate your support of the show.
Absolutely.
And, it was fun to have you on, learn a little bit about you and your dad and the firm, and look forward to meeting some of the other partners soon.
Yeah, they're great.
Awesome.
You'll love them.
All right. Jamie Anzalone on the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door Studio. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Bill.
If you want to see more On the Stacks content, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/onthestackspodcast or search the hashtag #OnTheStacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. We'll catch you next time on The Stacks.